The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, carried by a dust-covered rider who looked like he had ridden straight through hell to deliver it. And in that moment, Florence Wright knew her life in Denver, Colorado, was about to change forever. She stood in the parlor of her boarding house, still wearing her plain gray dress and white apron from breakfast service, watching the words swim before her eyes as she read them for the third time. Her aunt, the only family member who had ever shown her genuine kindness, was dead. Consumption had taken her swiftly, the lawyer wrote, but before passing she had left Florence something unexpected. A small house on the outskirts of Florence, Arizona territory, and enough money to make the journey there. Bad news, Miss Wright, Mrs. Henderson, the boarding house proprietress, peered over her spectacles with the kind of concern that was really just curiosity dressed up in better clothes. "My aunt has passed," Florence replied, folding the letter carefully. "I will need to give notice. I am leaving for Arizona territory." Mrs. Henderson's eyebrows shot up. Arizona territory. A young woman of 22 traveling alone to that wild place. "Florence, be sensible. What would you do there?" "Live," Florence said simply. "For the first time in my life, truly live." She had been working at the boarding house for 4 years, ever since her father had made it clear that she was an unwelcome burden in his new marriage. Her stepmother had 3 daughters of her own, pretty and delicate things who knew how to flutter their eyelashes and speak in soft voices that made men feel important. Florence had never mastered those arts. She spoke her mind, she read books about medicine and ranching, and she had once made the mistake of expressing an opinion about politics at the dinner table. Her father had sent her away the next week. The journey to Florence, Arizona territory, took 12 days by train and stagecoach, and Florence watched the landscape change from the mountains of Colorado to the vast, stark beauty of the Arizona desert. The air grew hotter, drier, filled with the scent of creosote and dust. When the stage finally rolled into Florence in late May of 1884, she stepped down onto the main street and felt something shift inside her chest, like a door opening after years of being locked. The town was small, built along the Gila River, with adobe buildings baking in the fierce sun and wooden structures that looked like they were holding their breath against the wind. Cowboys rode past, their faces weathered and hard. Women in calico dresses hurried between the general store and the post office, shielding their faces from the sun. In the distance, mountains rose purple and mysterious against the endless blue sky. Florence collected her trunk from the stage office and asked directions to the lawyer's office. Mr. Patterson turned out to be a thin man with kind eyes who seemed relieved to see her. "Miss Wright, I am glad you came. Your aunt spoke of you often in her final days. She wanted you to have a chance at something better." He handed her a key and a sheaf of papers. "The house is modest, but it is yours free and clear. There is also a sum of $500. Your aunt was quite frugal in her habits. $500. It was more money than Florence had ever possessed in her life. Combined with the $40 she had saved from her wages, it felt like a fortune. "Where is the house?" "About 2 miles west of town. It sits on 5 acres. The land is not prime for farming, but your aunt kept chickens and a small garden. I must warn you, though, it is somewhat isolated. Your nearest neighbor is the Preston Ranch, about a mile north. Your aunt and William Preston had an understanding. He would check on her weekly and help with repairs in exchange for eggs and vegetables." "I see. Well, I am sure I can manage on my own." Mr. Patterson looked doubtful but did not argue. He arranged for a boy to drive her and her trunk out to the property in a wagon, and within an hour Florence was standing in front of her new home. It was small, built of adobe with a wooden porch that sagged slightly on one side. The windows were intact, and when she pushed open the door, she found the interior clean and simply furnished. There was a main room with a stone fireplace, a small bedroom, and a kitchen with a cast iron stove. The furniture was basic but solid. A table, 2 chairs, a bed frame with a thin mattress, a dresser. Florence set down her carpetbag and walked through the house slowly, touching the walls, the table, the windowsill. This was hers. No one could send her away. No one could tell her she was not good enough, not feminine enough, not quiet enough. She spent the rest of the day unpacking and exploring the property. The chicken coop was empty, but structurally sound. The garden plot was overgrown with weeds. There was a small barn, barely more than a shed, and a well with a bucket on a rope that brought up cool, clear water. As the sun began to set, painting the desert in shades of orange and gold, Florence sat on her porch and allowed herself to feel something she had not felt in years: hope. The next morning, she rose early and made a list. She needed chickens, seeds for the garden, basic supplies for the house, and information about how one actually survived in this harsh, beautiful place. She dressed in her most practical dress, pinned her dark brown hair into a severe bun, and began the walk into town. She was halfway there when she heard the sound of hoofbeats behind her. She turned to see a man on horseback, leading a packhorse laden with supplies. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with sun-bronzed skin and dark blonde hair that curled slightly at the collar. He wore work clothes, dusty from the road, and a hat that shaded eyes the color of the sky at dawn, somewhere between blue and gray. He slowed as he approached and touched his hat brim. "Morning, miss. You would be Miss Wright, I am guessing." "I am, and you are, William Preston. My ranch is north of your property. Your aunt and I were neighbors." He swung down from his horse with easy grace. "I heard you had arrived. I wanted to pay my respects and see if you needed any help settling in." Florence studied him. He was older than her, perhaps 28 or 30, with a weathered face that suggested years of hard work under the sun. His eyes were kind, patient, with small lines at the corners that came from squinting into the distance or, perhaps, from smiling. There was something steady about him, something that made her want to trust him, which immediately made her wary. "That is kind of you, but I am managing." "I am sure you are," he said easily, "but this land can be unforgiving if you do not know its ways. Your aunt, she understood that. We helped each other." "I am not my aunt. No, I can see that." There was no judgment in his voice, just observation. "Still, if you are heading into town, I would be happy to give you a ride. Save your feet in this heat." Florence was about to refuse, but the sun was already fierce, and she was wearing her only pair of good shoes. Pride was one thing, but stupidity was another. "Thank you. That would be acceptable." He helped her up onto his horse, then mounted behind her. She sat stiffly, acutely aware of his presence behind her, the warmth of him in the morning air, the way his arms reached around her to hold the reins. They rode in silence for a few minutes before he spoke again. "Your aunt was a good woman. She taught me how to treat colic in horses with a mixture of herbs I would never have thought to try. Saved my best mare. She was always interested in healing." That she was. "And you, what are your interests, Miss Wright?" Florence considered the question. Most men did not actually want to know what interested a woman beyond needlework and recipes. "I read extensively. History, agriculture, medicine. I am good with numbers. I worked in a boarding house keeping accounts and managing supplies. Practical skills. I have found it wise to be practical." "Yet you came all the way to Arizona territory by yourself. That is not what most would call practical." She felt herself bristle. "I came because I inherited property and saw no reason to refuse it." "No reason at all," he agreed. "This land has a way of calling to certain people." The ones who do not quite fit in the places they came from. Florence turned her head slightly, trying to see his face. Are you saying I do not fit? I am saying I recognize someone who is looking for space to breathe. The observation was so accurate it made her chest tighten. She turned forward again, saying nothing. They reached town and William helped her down in front of the general store. If you need anything, Miss Wright, my ranch is due north of your property. Follow the creek bed and you will find it. I check the water sources every Wednesday and Saturday, so I pass near your place anyway. I am sure I will be fine. I am sure you will be, he said again with that same patient tone, but the offer stands. He touched his hat brim and rode off, and Florence stood watching him go, irritated with herself for noticing the way he sat his horse, easy and confident, like he was part of the animal. She shook her head and went into the general store. The proprietor, a round man named Mr. Chen who had come from California during the gold rush and stayed when the gold ran out, greeted her warmly. Miss Wright, welcome to Florence. Your aunt, she was a good customer. I hope you will be the same. I need supplies, Florence said, consulting her list. Chickens, seeds, basic foodstuffs, lamp oil. I can help with everything but the chickens. For those, you want Mrs. Rodriguez, 3 houses down on the left, the one with the blue door. She raises them. Florence spent the next hour purchasing supplies and arranging for Mr. Chen to deliver them that afternoon. Then she walked to the house with the blue door and knocked. Mrs. Rodriguez turned out to be a stout woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a ready smile. You are the niece? Yes. Come in, I will get you chickens. The house smelled of chili and fresh tortillas, and Florence's stomach rumbled. She had not eaten breakfast, Mrs. Rodriguez noticed. Sit, eat, then we talk about chickens. I could not impose. You are not imposing, I am offering. There is a difference. She ladled a bowl of beans and rice, topped it with fresh salsa, and placed it in front of Florence with a warm tortilla on the side. Eat. Florence ate, and it was the best meal she had tasted in months. As she ate, Mrs. Rodriguez talked, her hands moving expressively. Your aunt, she was good to me. When my husband died 3 years ago, she brought me soup every week for a month. She never made me feel like charity. So I take care of her niece, yes. I have 6 hens, good layers, and a rooster. You need a rooster to keep the hens happy and safe. I give you all 7 for $3. That is very generous. That is fair. I have more hatching. Now you know how to keep chickens. I am afraid I do not. Mrs. Rodriguez clicked her tongue, but without irritation. Then I teach you, come. She spent the next hour teaching Florence about chicken keeping, about water and feed, about protecting them from coyotes and hawks, about collecting eggs and keeping the coop clean. By the time Florence left with her 7 chickens in a crate, she felt slightly less ignorant about desert survival. Mr. Chen's delivery wagon arrived at her house that evening, and William Preston arrived right behind it, unannounced. Thought you might need help unloading, he said, already swinging down from his horse. Florence wanted to protest, but there were heavy sacks of flour and cornmeal, and she was tired. Thank you, she said instead. They worked together in silence, carrying supplies into the house. William moved with efficient economy, placing things where they would be most useful without being told. When they finished, Florence pumped water and offered him a cup. He drank deeply, and she tried not to notice the way his throat moved, the dust on his skin, the strength in his hands. Your chickens look good, he said, nodding toward the crate. Mrs. Rodriguez's stock is healthy. She was very helpful. She is good people. Most folks here are once they know you. He set down the cup. I should go. I just wanted to make sure you were settled. Mr. Preston, Florence said suddenly, surprising herself. Why are you being so kind to me? He looked at her for a long moment, those dawn-colored eyes steady and clear. Because you are my neighbor. And because you look like someone who has not had a lot of kindness in her life, and I figure it is about time that changed." Then he mounted his horse and rode off into the dusk, leaving Florence standing on her porch, feeling something she could not quite name. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm. Florence rose with the sun, tended her chickens, worked in her garden, and slowly learned the patterns of the desert. The heat was brutal, but the mornings and evenings were beautiful. She learned which plants were edible, which were medicinal, which would kill you if you were foolish enough to eat them. She learned to watch for snakes, to shake out her boots before putting them on, to conserve water, and she saw William Preston regularly, though he never imposed. He would ride past on his way to check water sources, always with a friendly wave. Sometimes he would stop and offer advice about a problem she was facing. He helped her repair the sagging porch, showing her how to shore up the posts. He brought her a book about desert plants that had belonged to his mother. He was patient, respectful, and never expected anything in return. It made Florence deeply uncomfortable because she did not know what to do with uncomplicated kindness. One evening in late June, she was in her garden pulling weeds when she heard hoofbeats approaching fast. She stood, shading her eyes, and saw William riding hard. He pulled up at her fence, his horse lathered with sweat. "Miss Wright, I need your help." She did not hesitate. "What is wrong?" "One of my ranch hands, he got kicked by a horse. His leg is broken bad and the doctor is in Tucson for the week. Your aunt, she helped me set a break once. I am hoping you learned some of her skills." "I have read about it," Florence said. "I cannot promise anything." "I am not asking for promises. I am asking you to try." She grabbed her aunt's medical kit, which she had found in the house and had been studying, and let William pull her up onto his horse. They rode hard to his ranch, and Florence got her first look at the Preston property. It was larger than she had imagined, with a sturdy ranch house, a big barn, corrals, and several outbuildings. There were cattle grazing in distant pastures and horses in the near corrals. It was clear this was a working ranch, successful and well-maintained. The injured man, a young cowboy named Tom, was lying on a bunk in the bunkhouse, his face gray with pain. His lower leg was bent at an unnatural angle, and Florence felt her stomach clench. She knelt beside him, opening the medical kit. "Tom, I am going to help you, but it is going to hurt." "Do you understand?" He nodded, his jaw clenched. Florence looked up at William. "I need 2 straight pieces of wood for splints, clean cloth for bandaging, whiskey for sterilization, and for him to drink, and I need you to help hold him." William moved fast, gathering supplies. Another ranch hand, an older man named Jack, came to help hold Tom. Florence made Tom drink several swallows of whiskey, then she cleaned her hands and examined the break carefully. "It is a clean break," she said. "That is good. I need to pull it straight and set it." "Tom, this is going to hurt worse than anything you have ever felt, but it will be over quickly. Bite down on this." She folded a leather strap and placed it between his teeth. Then, with William holding Tom's shoulders and Jack holding his ankle, Florence grasped the leg firmly and pulled, feeling for the moment when the bones would align. Tom screamed through the leather, his body arching, and then suddenly the leg was straight. Florence worked quickly, splinting it carefully, binding it with clean cloth, making sure the splints extended well beyond the break on both sides. When she finished, she sat back on her heels, shaking slightly. Tom had passed out from the pain, which was probably for the best. "That was well done," Jack said. "Real well done. I have seen field doctors do worse." Florence cleaned her hands and looked at William. "He needs to stay off that leg for at least 6 weeks. The splints should not be removed. If there is swelling, fever, or if it starts to smell bad, you need to get the doctor no matter where he is." "I will do that," William said. "Thank you, Miss Wright. I know that could not have been easy." "It was not," Florence admitted. Her hands were still shaking. "But I am glad I could help." William walked her outside, away from the bunkhouse. The sun was setting, turning the sky the color of fire. "You should stay for supper. It is the least I can offer. I should get home. It is nearly dark. Stay. I will ride you home after we eat." Florence wanted to refuse, but she was exhausted and hungry, and the thought of the long walk home in the dark was not appealing. All right. William's ranch house was simple but comfortable. He had a cook, an elderly Mexican woman named Maria who lived in a small house near the kitchen. She served them beef stew with fresh biscuits, and Florence ate hungrily. "You live here alone?" she asked. "Mostly. I have 6 men who work for me. Most of them sleep in the bunkhouse. Maria lives here on the property. It is enough." "How long have you had the ranch?" 8 years. "I came here after working on my father's ranch in Texas. We had a disagreement about how things should be run, so I struck out on my own. Bought this land when it was raw desert and built it into something." He sipped his coffee. "It is not much, but it is mine." "I understand that feeling," Florence said quietly. They talked as they ate, and Florence found herself relaxing in a way she rarely did around men. William did not try to impress her or dominate the conversation. He listened when she spoke, asked thoughtful questions, and seemed genuinely interested in her opinions about everything from cattle breeds to water conservation. When they finished eating, he saddled a horse and rode her home. At her door, he helped her down and stood looking at her in the moonlight. "Thank you again, Miss Wright. You saved Tom's leg, maybe his life." "I only did what anyone would do." "No," he said firmly. "Not anyone. You did not panic, you did not hesitate, and you did not doubt yourself, even though I could see you were scared. That takes courage." Florence felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I should go in. Good night, Mr. Preston." "Good night, Miss Wright." She lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, replaying the evening in her mind. The feel of setting the bone, the way William had looked at her with respect, and something else she could not quite name, the ease of their conversation. She was not accustomed to any of it, and it frightened her almost as much as it drew her. July brought monsoon rains that turned the desert briefly green and filled the normally dry washes with rushing water. Florence learned to watch the sky, to read the clouds, to know when to bring the chickens inside and secure anything that might blow away. William continued to ride past regularly, and now Florence found herself listening for his hoofbeats, watching the northern horizon. He always stopped to talk, sometimes for a few minutes, sometimes for an hour. He told her about his ranch, about his plans to expand his herd, about the challenges of ranching in such harsh country. She told him about her books, about her thoughts on crop rotation in desert soil, about her growing competence with chicken husbandry. One afternoon in late July, he arrived with a young calf across his saddle. "Orphan," he said. "Mother died birthing twins. The other one is nursing from a different cow, but she would not take this one. I thought maybe you would want to try raising him." Florence looked at the small, wobbly calf. "I have no experience with cattle. Neither did I once. You learn by doing." He dismounted, carrying the calf. "You have that small barn. He can stay there. I will give you milk from one of my cows to start and show you how to feed him. Eventually, he will graze." "Why are you giving him to me?" William set the calf down in her barn, and it immediately folded its legs and lay in the straw. "Because everyone should have something to care for, and because I think you would be good at it." So Florence became the owner of a calf she named Clover, because she was determined he would survive to eat the clover she had planted in her garden. William was patient in teaching her, showing her how to feed Clover from a bottle, how much and how often, how to keep him healthy. It meant he came by every evening for the first week, checking on Clover's progress, and Florence found she did not mind at all. One evening, as they stood watching Clover nurse from his bottle, William said quietly, "I enjoy this, spending time with you." Florence's heart jumped. "I am not good company, I disagree. You are the best company I have had in years. I am too blunt, I speak my mind. I am not soft or gentle or any of the things men want in a woman." "You are honest and intelligent and competent," William said. "Those are the things I want." Florence turned to look at him. The setting sun cast him in gold, and she felt something crack open inside her chest, something she had kept locked away for so long she had forgotten it was there. "I do not know how to be what you want," she whispered. "I want you to be yourself. You do not know what you are asking." He reached out slowly, giving her time to move away, and touched her cheek with rough, gentle fingers. "Then tell me. Help me understand." Florence closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of his hand. "When I was 16, there was a man, a friend of my father's. He courted me briefly, said all the right things. Then one day he told me that my opinions were tiresome, that I should learn to be quiet and agreeable if I ever wanted to be a wife. My father agreed with him, so I tried. I tried so hard to be quiet, to smile and nod and never say what I really thought. And I was miserable, and eventually the man courted someone else anyway, because I was not pretty enough to make up for my previous reputation." She opened her eyes and looked at William. "I cannot be a wife, Mr. Preston. I cannot be quiet and agreeable and decorative. I have tried, and it nearly killed something essential in me. I will not do it again." William was quiet for a long moment, his hand still cupping her cheek. Then he said, "Then just be yourself with me." "You do not understand what you are saying." "I think I do. You are saying you cannot pretend to be something you are not. I am saying I do not want you to. I want the woman who reads medical books, who sets broken bones, who speaks her mind about cattle breeds and water rights and politics if she wants to. I want the woman standing in front of me right now, exactly as she is." Florence felt tears sting her eyes. "Why?" "Because that woman is extraordinary, and I think I am falling in love with her." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and perfect. Florence wanted to believe him, but a lifetime of being told she was too much or not enough warred with the hope blooming in her chest. "I need time," she said finally. "I need to know this is real." "Take all the time you need," William said. "I am a patient man." He lowered his hand and stepped back, giving her space. "I should go. Clover is looking good, by the way. You are doing well with him." He mounted his horse and rode off, and Florence stood in her barn, her hand pressed to her cheek where he had touched her, feeling the world shift beneath her feet. August was brutal, the heat pressing down like a physical weight. Florence worked in the early mornings and late evenings, resting during the worst of the day's heat. Her garden was thriving, her chickens were laying well, and Clover was growing stronger every day. And William courted her in the most unexpected way. He did not bring flowers or write poetry. Instead, he brought her a book about veterinary medicine that he had ordered from San Francisco. He fixed her well pump when it started to stick. He invited her to his ranch and showed her his operation, asking her opinion about things, listening when she spoke, implementing her suggestions when they made sense. He treated her like an equal, like a partner, like someone whose thoughts and ideas mattered. And slowly, carefully, Florence began to let down her guard. They talked for hours, sitting on her porch in the evenings or riding together to check fence lines. She told him about her father's rejection, about her years at the boarding house, about the loneliness of being a woman who did not fit the expected mold. He told her about his own struggles, about leaving his father's ranch with nothing but his horse and his pride, about the hard years building this place, about the loneliness of success without someone to share it with. "I want a partner," he said one evening. They were sitting on her porch, watching the stars emerge in the vast sky. Someone who sees this ranch as theirs too, who helps make decisions, who builds something with me instead of just existing beside me. I have seen too many marriages where the wife is decorative and miserable, or where the husband treats his wife like an ornamental piece of property. I do not want that. What do you want? Florence asked, her heart beating fast. I want you, he said simply. I want to wake up every morning knowing you are beside me. I want to work all day and come home to you. I want to talk about everything and nothing. I want to build a life together, not two separate lives that just happen to occupy the same space. Florence looked at him, at this patient man who saw her and did not flinch. I am scared. I know. What if I disappoint you? What if you realize I am too difficult, too opinionated, too much work? William reached over and took her hand, his calloused fingers threading through hers. Florence, you could never be too much for me. The only way you could disappoint me is if you stopped being yourself. I do not know how to do this, be courted, be loved. I have no experience with it. Neither do I, really, so we will figure it out together. He raised her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles, and Florence felt something inside her finally, fully, break open. I think I am falling in love with you too, she whispered. His smile was like the sun rising. Then we are both fortunate. In early September, word came that there would be a dance in town, a celebration of the harvest and the end of the worst summer heat. William asked Florence to accompany him, and though the thought of being social made her anxious, she agreed. She had one good dress, a simple blue cotton that she wore to church on the rare Sundays she went. She washed it carefully, pressed it, and pinned her hair in a softer style than usual. When William arrived to collect her, his eyes widened. You look beautiful. Florence felt herself blush. It is just a dress. It is not just anything. You are beautiful, Florence. I wish you could see yourself the way I see you. The dance was held in the town hall, with tables laden with food and a small group of musicians playing fiddle and guitar. Florence felt every eye turn toward them when they entered, and she fought the urge to run. William seemed to sense her tension. He kept her hand firmly in his and led her to where Mrs. Rodriguez was sitting with a group of other women. Mrs. Rodriguez, you remember Miss Wright? Of course. Come, sit with us. Tell us how your chickens are doing. The women made space for her, and Florence found herself drawn into conversation about chickens and gardens and the challenges of desert living. They were kind, these women, and curious about her in a friendly way. They asked about her aunt, about her journey from Denver, about her plans for her property, and they asked about William with knowing smiles. He is a good man, Mrs. Rodriguez said, patient, kind, and he looks at you like you are water in the desert. Florence felt her cheeks heat. We are friends. Friends, one of the other women said with a laugh. Sure. My husband looked at me like that when we were friends too. Now we have 6 children. The women laughed, and Florence found herself laughing with them, the tension easing from her shoulders. When William asked her to dance, she hesitated. I am not very good. Neither am I. We will be not very good together. They joined the other couples on the floor, and William took her hand, placing his other hand carefully at her waist. The music was simple, a slow waltz, and he led her through the steps with patient guidance. You are better than you think, he murmured. You are just very forgiving. Maybe I am just very in love. Florence looked up at him, at his honest face, his patient eyes, and felt the last of her resistance crumble. William. Yes, take me home. I need to talk to you properly. They made their excuses and left, riding together on his horse through the cool night. At her house, Florence lit a lamp and invited him inside, her hands shaking slightly. William, I need to be very clear about something. All right. I am not a traditional woman. I will never be content to stay in the house while you do all the work. I will want to be involved in the ranch decisions. I will want to learn everything about cattle and horses and land management. I will speak my mind, even when it might be easier to stay quiet. I might embarrass you in front of other ranchers because I will not pretend to be less than I am." William listened, his expression serious. "Is that everything?" "I think so." "Good. Now let me be clear. I do not want a traditional wife. I want a partner who challenges me, who makes me think, who is not afraid to tell me when I am being foolish. I want someone who will work beside me, who cares about the ranch as much as I do. I want you, Florence, exactly as you are, with all your opinions and intelligence and stubbornness. I want you so much that sometimes it makes it hard to breathe." He stepped closer, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "I love you. Not some imaginary version of you, not the woman you think you should be. I love the real you, the complete you. And I am asking if you will consider marrying me. Not to be my wife in the traditional sense, but to be my partner in every sense. To build a life with me where we are equals, where your voice matters as much as mine, where we make decisions together." Florence felt tears spill down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." William pulled her into his arms and she went willingly, feeling safe in a way she never had before. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, and finally, gently, her lips. The kiss was soft and sweet and full of promise. "I will spend every day of my life making sure you never regret this," he said against her hair. "I will not regret it," Florence said. "For the first time in my life I am choosing something for myself, something I want, and what I want is you." They were married in October, when the worst of the heat had passed, and the desert was beautiful in its autumn colors. The wedding was small, held at the church in Florence with Mrs. Rodriguez and her family, Mr. Chen from the general store, Jack and the other ranch hands, and a handful of other townspeople who had befriended Florence over the past months. Florence wore a new dress, pale yellow cotton with lace at the collar, that Mrs. Rodriguez had helped her choose. William wore a suit that looked uncomfortable on his rancher's frame, but his eyes, when he saw Florence walking toward him, made her feel like the most beautiful woman in the world. The minister kept the ceremony short and simple. When it came time for the vows, William spoke as clearly and firmly, promising to love and honor her, to be her partner in all things, to value her opinions and her dreams as much as his own. When it was Florence's turn, her voice shook only slightly. "I promise to love you, to work beside you, to challenge you when necessary and support you always. I promise to be fully myself with you, even when it is difficult. And I promise to build a life with you that honors both of us." The minister smiled and pronounced them married, and William kissed her in front of everyone. Not a polite peck, but a real kiss that made Mrs. Rodriguez cheer and the ranch hands whistle. The reception was held at William's ranch, Florence's ranch now too, she reminded herself, and there was food and music and dancing. Florence danced with her husband, with Jack, with Mr. Chen, who was surprisingly graceful, and found herself happy in a way she had not known was possible. As the evening wore on and the guests began to leave, William took Florence's hand and led her to the ranch house, to the bedroom that was now theirs. "Are you nervous?" he asked gently. "A little," she admitted. "I do not have much experience with any of this." "Neither do I," he said, which surprised her. "We will learn together like everything else." He kissed her slowly, carefully, giving her time to respond, to relax. His hands were gentle as he helped her out of her dress, and when she stood before him in just her chemise, he looked at her with such reverence that she felt beautiful. "You are perfect," he whispered. "I am not. To me, you are." They came together slowly, learning each other, and if it was awkward at first, it was also tender and sweet. William was patient, attentive, making sure she was comfortable, that she wanted to continue. And when they finally joined, Florence felt something click into place, a sense of belonging she had searched for her entire life. Afterward, they lay tangled together, and Florence rested her head on William's chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I love you," she said. "I am not sure I have said it clearly enough, but I do. I love you so much it scares me." "I love you too," he said, his hand stroking her hair. "And you do not need to be scared. I am not going anywhere. We are building this together." Life on the ranch settled into a new rhythm. Florence moved into the main house, bringing her chickens and Clover, who was now large enough to join the other cattle. She threw herself into learning about ranching, riding out with William and the hands, learning to rope and brand and doctor sick cattle. She was not naturally skilled at all of it, but she was determined, and determination counted for a lot. William was true to his word. He asked her opinion on everything from which bulls to purchase to how to rotate the pastures. Sometimes they disagreed, and they would argue it out until they found a solution that worked for both of them. Florence discovered that disagreeing with her husband did not mean he loved her less. It just meant they were working toward the best solution. Maria, the cook, welcomed Florence warmly and taught her about desert cooking, about how to make the most of limited ingredients, about preserving food for the harsh months. Mrs. Rodriguez visited often, bringing vegetables from her garden and gossip from town. Florence found herself part of a community in a way she had never been before. The ranch hands, initially skeptical of a woman who wanted to be involved in the work, came to respect her. She helped Jack develop a better treatment protocol for cattle parasites. She suggested a new system for water distribution that saved time and effort. She worked as hard as any of them, and they noticed. In January, Florence realized she was pregnant. She told William one evening as they were settling into bed, her heart hammering, "I am with child." He sat up, his face transforming with joy. "Truly, truly, are you pleased?" "Pleased, Florence, I am beyond pleased. I am honored. I am terrified. I am everything." He pulled her close, his hand resting gently on her still flat stomach. "We are going to be parents. I know nothing about being a mother, and I know nothing about being a father, so again, we will learn together." The pregnancy was not easy. The heat of summer was miserable, and Florence struggled with nausea and fatigue. But William was endlessly supportive, taking over the heavier tasks without making her feel useless, bringing her cool water and whatever foods she could tolerate, rubbing her aching back in the evenings. Mrs. Rodriguez visited often, bringing advice and practical help. "Your aunt would be so happy," she said one afternoon, sitting with Florence on the porch. "She always hoped you would find someone who deserved you." "Did she really say that?" "Many times. She said you were too bright, too strong for most men. But that somewhere there was a man brave enough to appreciate that instead of fear it. I think she would like William very much." In September of 1885, after a long and difficult labor, Florence gave birth to a son. William held her hand through all of it, his face pale but determined. When the midwife finally placed the baby in Florence's arms, she looked down at his tiny, perfect face and felt love so intense it was almost painful. "He is beautiful," William whispered, tears on his face. "You are amazing. You did so well." "We did well," Florence corrected. "We made this together." They named him Wesley Frederick Preston, and he had his father's dawn-colored eyes and his mother's determined chin. William was a devoted father from the first moment, changing diapers and walking the floor when Wesley cried, refusing to let Florence bear the burden alone. "He is ours," he said. "We do everything together, remember?" Life became fuller, richer, more complicated. Florence learned to balance motherhood with her work on the ranch. She nursed Wesley while reviewing accounts. She taught him about chickens when he was barely old enough to toddle. William made a carrier so they could take him out with them when they rode the property. When Wesley was 2, Florence realized she was pregnant again. This time, she was less frightened, more confident. And when their daughter was born in the spring of 1888, with dark hair and her mother's fierce expression, Florence felt their family become complete. They named her Margaret Ellen, after both their mothers, but from the beginning she was Maggie. She was a whirlwind of a child, fearless and curious, always trying to follow her older brother into mischief. The ranch prospered. William's careful management combined with Florence's organizational skills and willingness to innovate made them successful. They expanded their herd, bought more land, hired more hands, but they never lost sight of what mattered most: their partnership, their family, their commitment to facing everything together. One evening in the summer of 1890, when Wesley was 4 and Maggie was 2, Florence and William sat on their porch watching their children play in the yard. Wesley was showing Maggie how to feed the chickens, both of them covered in dust and grinning. "Do you remember when I first told you I could not be a wife?" Florence asked. William smiled. "I remember. You were so fierce, so certain you could not fit into that role." "I was right," Florence said. "I could not be a wife the way I thought wives had to be, but I could be this. Your partner. Your equal, the mother of your children, myself, fully and completely." "You are the best thing that ever happened to me," William said, taking her hand. "You and our children, this life we have built. I am grateful every single day that you took a chance on me. You took a chance on me too. You saw me when no one else did. You loved me when I did not know how to love myself." "I think we saved each other," William said. Wesley came running up to the porch, Maggie toddling behind him. "Mama, Papa, come see. The hen has babies." They walked together to the chicken coop, a family, and Florence felt such contentment that it brought tears to her eyes. This was what she had needed all along, not to change herself, but to find someone who loved her exactly as she was. That night after the children were asleep, William and Florence lay in bed together, comfortable in the way long married couples become. "Do you ever regret it?" Florence asked. "Marrying someone so difficult," William laughed quietly. "You are not difficult, you are dynamic." "And no, I have never regretted it for a single moment. Do you?" "Never," Florence said firmly. "This is the life I was always meant to have. I just did not know it existed until I found you." "Until we found each other," William corrected. "Yes," Florence agreed, snuggling closer. "Until we found each other." The years passed, as years do. Wesley grew into a tall, thoughtful boy who loved the ranch and dreamed of expanding it someday. Maggie grew into a fierce, intelligent girl who reminded Florence powerfully of herself. There were hard times, droughts that tested their water resources, a winter so cold they lost part of their herd, an accident that laid William up for weeks with a broken ribs. But through it all, they faced everything together. Florence never stopped speaking her mind, and William never stopped listening. They argued sometimes, passionately, but they always remembered they were on the same side. They worked side by side, building not just a ranch but a legacy. In 1895, when Florence was 33 and William was 41, they had another child, a surprise daughter they named Ruth, who arrived with a shock of red hair neither of them could account for and a cry that could probably be heard in the next county. "Where did she come from?" William asked, bemused, holding his red-headed daughter. "Maybe my grandmother," Florence said. "She had red hair according to my aunt." "Well, she is ours and she is perfect," William declared. Wesley, now 10, and Maggie, now 7, were fascinated by their baby sister. They helped care for her, and Florence watched her family grow with a full heart. The ranch continued to thrive. They were respected in the community, sought out for advice about ranching and land management. Florence became known as someone who could doctor animals, and sometimes people when the doctor was unavailable. She never lost her love of learning, and their house filled with books on every subject imaginable. William added onto the house, creating a real parlor and more bedrooms, building a covered porch that wrapped around two sides so Florence could sit outside even in the heat of summer. He planted trees, precious in the desert, that would provide shade for years to come. In 1900, as the new century dawned, Florence and William stood on their porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in impossible colors. Their children were inside, Wesley helping Maggie with her arithmetic, while Ruth, now 5, played with carved wooden animals William had made her. "It is a new century," Florence said. "Can you believe how much has changed?" "I can," William said. "Change is constant, but some things stay the same. I loved you in 1884, I love you now, and I will love you in every year that comes." Florence leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steadiness that had never wavered. "I was so lost when I came here. I thought I was coming to a house, a piece of property, but I was really coming home, to you, to this life." "We were both lost," William said. "And we found each other. That is what matters." Over the next few years, they watched their children grow. Wesley, at 16, was already running parts of the ranch, showing a natural aptitude for both the work and for leadership. Maggie, at 13, was torn between her love of the ranch and a growing fascination with teaching, sparked by a new teacher in Florence who encouraged her intellectual curiosity. Ruth, at 8, was still wild and free, riding like she was born on horseback and declaring she would be a cowgirl forever. Florence and William grew older gracefully, their hair silvering, their faces weathering, but their love for each other only deepening. They still worked side by side, though they hired more help to handle the heaviest labor. They still made decisions together, still argued and laughed and loved. In 1905, Wesley brought home a girl, a rancher's daughter from a neighboring property named Emma. She was quiet and competent with a steel core underneath her gentle demeanor. Florence liked her immediately. "She reminds me of you," William said. "She is nothing like me. She is actually quiet. She is strong. She knows her own mind. She is not afraid of hard work. Trust me, she is like you." Wesley and Emma married in 1906, and Florence watched her son pledge his life to his partner, promising the same things William had promised her 21 years earlier. She saw the way Emma looked at Wesley, with respect and love in equal measure, and she knew they would be all right. Maggie, at 18, announced she wanted to go to the normal school in Tempe to become a teacher. It would mean leaving the ranch, and Florence saw the conflict in her daughter's face. "Go," Florence said. "Follow what calls to you. The ranch will always be here, and so will we." "But you stayed. You helped build this." "I stayed because this was where I needed to be. You need to go and discover where you need to be. There is no shame in that. Your father and I will support whatever you choose." So Maggie went to Tempe, and though Florence missed her fiercely, she was proud beyond measure. Her daughter was getting opportunities Florence had never had, and that was as it should be. Ruth, at 13, remained devoted to the ranch, to the horses and cattle and endless sky. She was the one Florence thought might take over the ranch someday if she wanted it, though Wesley and Emma would have a claim too, but all of that was for the future. For now, Florence focused on the present, on the life she had built with William. In 1910, they celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary with a party that seemed to include half of Pinal County. Their house was filled with friends, family, ranch hands past and present, townspeople who had become dear over the years. Wesley and Emma were there with their new baby, a boy they had named William. Maggie came from Temp, bringing stories of her teaching and a young man she was courting, another teacher who made her laugh. Ruth helped organize everything, running around like a general commanding troops. At the height of the party, Mrs. Rodriguez, now in her 80s but still sharp as ever, stood up and called for quiet. "I want to make a toast," she announced, "to Florence and William Preston, who showed everyone what a real marriage looks like. Not a man and his property, but two partners building something together. They worked hard, they loved harder, and they raised good children. That is a life well lived." Everyone raised their glasses, and Florence felt tears sting her eyes. William put his arm around her and pulled her close. "We did it," he whispered. "We built a good life." "We did," Florence agreed. "Against all odds, we really did." That night, after everyone had left and the house was quiet, Florence and William lay in bed, exhausted but happy. "Do you ever think about how different your life would have been if you had never come to Arizona?" William asked. "Sometimes," Florence admitted. "I would have stayed in Denver, working at that boarding house, growing old and bitter. I would never have known this was possible. Love, partnership, family, purpose. I would never have known you. I try not to think about that too much. It makes me sad." "Do not be sad. We found each other. That is what matters." William rolled onto his side, looking at her in the moonlight that streamed through the window. "I love you, Florence Preston. I have loved you for 26 years, and I will love you until I take my last breath. And I love you, William Preston. Thank you for seeing me, for loving me, for letting me be myself." He kissed her, sweet and deep. And Florence thought about that frightened, angry woman who had arrived in Florence, Arizona in 1884, certain she could never fit into any man's life. She wished she could go back and tell that woman what was waiting for her. Tell her that, yes, she could not be a traditional wife, but she could be something better. Herself, fully and completely, loved for exactly who she was. The years continued to pass. Maggie married her teacher, a kind man named Daniel, and settled in Phoenix, teaching there and eventually having 3 daughters of her own. Ruth married a cowboy who worked on their ranch, a young man named Sam who respected her wildness and loved her for it. They took over much of the day-to-day running of the ranch, with Wesley and Emma managing the business side from the house. They built on the north pasture. Florence and William gradually retired from active ranch management, though Florence still kept her chickens and her garden, and William still rode out to check the property. They had earned their rest, but neither of them was content to stop completely. The land was in their blood now. In 1918, when Florence was 56 and William was 64, they became great-grandparents for the first time when Wesley and Emma's son, William, had a daughter. Holding that tiny baby, Florence marveled at the continuity of life, at how her choices in 1884 had rippled forward to create this moment. "For generations," William said, standing beside her. "We started this." "We did," Florence said. Not bad for a woman who thought she could never be a wife and a man patient enough to wait for her. They laughed, the easy laughter of people who have shared a lifetime together. In 1920, as the world changed around them, automobiles replacing horses, electricity coming even to rural areas, Florence and William sat on their porch as they had done thousands of times before. They were older now, moving more slowly, but still side by side. "You have any regrets?" Florence asked. It was a question she had asked before over the years, always needing reassurance. "Not a single one," William said, as he always did. Florence thought about it, really thought about it. She thought about the life she might have had if she had stayed in Denver, if she had tried harder to be the woman everyone expected. She thought about all the ways her life could have been different, smaller, quieter. "No," she said finally. No regrets at all. This has been a good life. A very good life. The best, William agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the land they had worked together for 36 years. In the distance, they could hear Ruth calling to Sam, could see their cattle grazing peacefully, could hear the chickens settling in for the night. This was their legacy. Not just the land or the ranch or the children and grandchildren, but the proof that love did not have to fit a mold. That two people could build something extraordinary if they were brave enough to be themselves with each other. William reached over and took Florence's hand, his fingers still strong despite his age, and she laced her fingers through his. They had held hands like this a million times, in joy and in sorrow, in triumph and in struggle. These hands had built a life together. "I love you," Florence said, because it never got old, saying those words to this man. "And I love you," William replied, as he had replied thousands of times before. As the stars began to emerge in the vast Arizona sky, Florence thought about that young woman who had arrived on a stage in 1884, scared and defiant and certain she would never fit anywhere. She wished she could tell that woman that she was right. She did not fit into the boxes the world had built for women. But that was all right, because William Preston had helped her build her own space, one where she could be exactly who she was meant to be. And together, they had created something beautiful. The ranch continued to thrive under Ruth and Sam's management, with Wesley and Emma providing steady guidance. The land that William had claimed from the desert, and that Florence had helped nurture for decades, would continue on, passed down through generations. But more than land or cattle or buildings, they had passed down something more valuable. The knowledge that love was not about changing yourself to fit someone else's expectations. It was about finding someone who loved you for exactly who you were, and loving them the same way in return. As Florence and William sat together under the stars, their hands clasped, their hearts full, they knew they had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. They had not just survived, they had thrived. They had not just built a ranch, they had built a family, a legacy, a love story that would echo through the generations. And when they finally rose from their chairs, William helping Florence to her feet with the same gentle care he had always shown, and walked together into their house, their home. They did so with the quiet satisfaction of two people who had lived fully and loved completely. The door closed behind them, but their story lived on in the land they had worked, in the children and grandchildren they had raised, in the example they had set of what true partnership could look like. Florence Wright Preston had come to Arizona Territory in 1884, believing she could never be a wife. But she had become something better, herself, fully and completely, loved and cherished for exactly who she was. And William Preston had proven that patience, respect, and genuine love could build something that would last not just a lifetime but for generations to come. In the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.